What's going on, everybody? This is Black Men Sundays. I'm your host, Corey Sylvester Murray, and we're talking about generational wealth, mental health, finance, and business.
It's a Black Man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate.
And this is a big election year. So, what did I do? I said, let's bring some panelists on and let's have a discussion about our presidential candidates. We're talking about Kamala Harris, not Kamala, it's Kamala. Let's get it going. Kamala Harris, and we have Donald Trump. So out the gate, let's introduce our guests. We're gonna introduce our sisters first. You know, we have respect on this show. So first off, we have the Honorable Reverend Dr. Rosalind Osgood. This sister's out of Broward County, Florida, and she's also a member of the Florida Senate. And next we have Shakia Moore. This sister's from Apopka, Florida. She's a radio host. She hosts Afro TV on Instagram Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 8 p.m. She's also a rising star in Florida politics. And check this, she was also the former PIO for duly elected state attorney Monique Worrell. Now let's go on to introduce our brothers, our Black Men Sunday alumni. I'm gonna go with Dr. Herbert Harris first, out of Wilmington, North Carolina. This brother's a retired attorney, the author of the 12 Universal Laws of Success, and I've read that book like 3 times. Major blessing, brother. We also have my brother Len Gilmer. He was the 5th guest on Black Men Sundays. This brother's a crypto miner, Bitcoin investor out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he also worked for Vanguard. And he bought real estate with his Bitcoin. So that's amazing. And also, we have my brother Richard Cuff out of Jacksonville, Florida. This brother's the founder of the December Business Alliance and the president of CTI Marketing. When we talk about generational wealth, this brother is the definition of that. And this brother's been on Black Men Sundays a few times. And lastly, we have my brother Marvin Wilson. This brother's Black Men Sunday alumni from Charlotte, North Carolina. He's the CEO of Funding Credit. This brother's a Desert Storm Navy vet. So without further ado, I'm gonna just go on and get this debate started. There's brothers out there saying, I'm not voting this year. I'm gonna sit this one out. I don't like both candidates. So ladies first, and like I said, try to keep your answers under 2 minutes. And if you want to engage, unmute, but let's not try to overtalk each other. Let's be professional here. This is Black excellence. Let's go.
Senator Osgood, I'll defer to you.
Well, thank you. And I've heard the rhetoric about not voting, but we must be real honest. If we're going to make any change happen, it's going to happen by us addressing the political determinants of social justice. It's the laws, the policies, the practice, and the budgets that makes nothing change in our community consistently. And I say that because I've had some to tell me that their bank accounts were better during certain times. But at the end of the day, we have to uplift our whole community, because when we have high concentrations of poverty, mass incarceration, massive amounts of homeless people, we all pay additional taxes and we all pay more for those things to happen in our communities. So not to vote is actually a vote. And people in the great state of Florida, the last gubernatorial race, when 40,000 people chose not to vote, and we've been suffering ever since.
I would definitely have to stack on that and definitely agree. Sitting out in this election is just not an option, especially for Black communities. What's mostly disappointing is a lot of the rhetoric that I'm also hearing is the fact that, you know, to Senator Osgood's point, oh, well, Donald Trump gave us a stimulus check, or, you know, gas prices were lower back then, or groceries were lower. That may very well be true, but we also know that he didn't give the stimulus check. He just signed it to take the credit for it. But when it comes to Black communities and there being such a tight race between, you know, voting for VP Harris or Donald Trump, I think the message is clear. Like, where do we want to go as a country? Both candidates aren't perfect, but there is a better choice out of the two, in my opinion. And I just want everyone to really just sit and think, if we elect Donald Trump into office, Project 2025 is a real thing. It is a playbook that is spelling out everything in verbatim what they will do. Black communities will not be in the picture of that. And in my honest opinion, I think it will take us back to days of Jim Crow and slavery. So I definitely want to hear the opinions of my colleagues on this call, but I really don't think that sitting out in this election will do us any justice.
Definitely. And I would like to go directly to Marvin Wilson. First off, Marvin Wilson, man, welcome back to Black Men Sundays. What are your thoughts about brothers not voting this election?
Well, I just think that we just got to look at all the possibilities ahead. We got to look at, it's a new time. We just gonna have to, relish into, what's really connected to who we are morally, where we are in awareness. Look at our future, man. Where we want to put where do we want to put our country? Where we look at it, where we think where we should be, and not to go either to Trump or the Kamala way. I just say, just listen to your spirit and know, what's right. Someone that's going to head, me being a Navy veteran, is someone that's going to, take accountability of where we are and understand where we are as a whole. When it comes to Black women, black men, just who we are and what we're standing for. And I think you'll make the right decisions based on the actions of the leaders that's opposed to president candidates.
Dr. Harris?
Sure, absolutely. This is really a predictable outcome. Unfortunately, we always start talking about voter education and making people aware of the importance to vote and the awareness of the candidates and the issues right before Election Day. And one of the things that I say that the Republicans have done over the last 50 years, they have engaged in an education, re-education, indoctrination program that has literally created an environment for people to vote against their own interests, to be led by lies and distortions, and to feel good about it. And so when we look at where we are, we look at the history. I grew up in the 50s. I started Columbia in 1960. I went to school with one of the Greensboro Four. And so I know segregation. I know when Black people didn't even take the college boards. And so, as a matter of fact, I wrote a book called Solving the Race Issue in America, where I actually went into the history of the 1898 coup in North Carolina that was almost executed in Washington, and showed how that act of disenfranchisement, that coup literally was a grab for power. And there was actually a white Declaration of Independence that appeared in the Raleigh News and Observer. And it basically laid the framework for everything that's happened. And after that coup, when George Henry White left Congress in 1901, there was not another person of color in Congress for 92 years. And so this idea of not voting, that we have, as leaders, we've really failed our Black men and women. And I'm not saying, like we didn't, because there was a lot of headwind going. We look at the school system taking civics out, taking trades out. So they basically undermined young Black people, and going to a school system in the South and the North, and in particular, a school system where people really don't care about you, where you got one guidance counselor for 1,000 students. And so nobody's been directing our young people, and so they don't even know where to get valid news from. They are so accustomed to getting their news from the internet now, they don't even relate to all of the Black papers are struggling because this was our primary source of valid information relative to us. And so we're at a very, very bad point. And I think we need to really, really realize a very, very bad point that we have our young people taking their information from the internet, and it's happened so fluidly that they believe it, even stuff that doesn't make sense. And when they don't know the history, they don't know how to put it in context and take a critical analysis to it and say, hey, even go back scripturally, the apple doesn't fall from the tree. So if there's a liar who's giving you the initial information, then everything, as a lawyer, I'm a retired attorney, and as a lawyer, once you get a person in a lie, you instruct the jury that you can disregard everything this person said, that if they lied then, they're probably lying now, and they're lying. The only time they don't lie is when their mouth ain't moving.
Mhm.
And so just based on that scripturally, we should be understanding where this is coming from. So it's a tough situation. I don't know how we can turn it around right now. I think we're going to really have to appeal to the internet and those means for mass communication, one. Two, we're going to have to go on a real one-on-one personal education with as many black men as we can contact. And three, we need to really remind folks of the history. They've forgotten it. That's why they don't want to teach it in the schools. That if this thing goes down the way that some people want it to go down, that it will set us back 150 years. And they have no idea what that means. But people like me who lived it need to be telling them.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Lynn and Richard Cuff, whoever wants to go first. Brother's not voting this year. They're gonna sit it out. Let's talk about it.
I'll say this: when we address these issues, and as I'm listening, we do need to go back 150 years. But because of the way technology is like just pumping information or misinformation and even disinformation, it makes it difficult for us to go back 150 minutes because there's so much new stuff. It's and even it's like it's the Republican tactic. Like they won't ever answer a question. You ask anybody, and I'll say maybe on the Democratic side. First of all, let me make this clear. I have no dog in this hunt. I've been no party affiliated for 40 years, and every year I have to change my party affiliation or choose a party affiliation in order to vote in a primary election, or I don't get to vote. My right to vote, which that law needs to be addressed, and our legislators are not doing their job in addressing the issues about the same way the Republicans have strategically unraveled laws. Our legislators, maybe I can say Democratic, but I'll just say Black legislators, because we don't come together to speak of our issues the same way white evangelicals did for the last 60 years to get their issues, right up to getting the Supreme Court. They played the long game until they got a Supreme Court that gave them what they want. We don't have anything. So Black people are notorious for avoiding chaos. We're not an evil people. All the data shows that the white organizations, the politicians, they know it. The data says that yes, even though this video is showing this Black man with a gun shooting another Black man, there are 10,000 times that number of Black men home playing with their children, caring for their families, going to jobs, but the media is not covering that story. So while we are just looking at the media to tell us the story, those who are watching the tea leaves, looking at the numbers, saying if we can put enough garbage out there, it's going to discourage Black people. It doesn't anger Black people. It discourages them. It angers white people. So the same information that angers white people discourages Black people. They get a 2-for-1. And that's how Trump did it. They put information out about Hillary Clinton that discouraged Black people from voting, while at the same time encourage white folk who wouldn't normally vote to vote. Next thing you know, in 5 different states where Hillary Clinton lost because over 200,000 Black folk that voted for Obama didn't show up for Hillary, Trump won those 5 states by less than 70,000 votes. And earlier, the state representative mentioned how we got Ron DeSantis because 40,000 Black people sat at home. And I said this before in the other broadcast: if you don't vote, you don't have a right to say jack. But and don't complain about high prices and this going on and that going on, when 40,000 of you did not vote, giving Ron DeSantis the right to do everything that he's done. And just October 1st, it's now a law that you can't be homeless on the street. And then I'll say this: when we got laws that we're not writing laws, I'll give you a perfect example. In Atlanta, there are 3 major corporations, private equity firms, that own 19,000 homes. And if you were to look at the 10 top investors, they own over 40,000 homes around the Atlanta area. And I think there may be 12 or 14, but there are some 400,000 homes that are owned by private equity firms. Guess who's not owning those homes? Black people. And so when we don't vote, there's a ripple effect all the way across the board. but then it creates such a massive thing for us to fight that we got to go back and fight a 150-year battle. But we can't, like I said, we can't fight the battle that will come up in the next 150 minutes. We can't afford not to vote. Get out and vote.
Gotcha. All right, Lynn.
Hey, how you doing? I enjoyed everybody's thoughts on the panel, and I guess they're sharing that same feeling that this is an election that shouldn't be sat out. I've always been a person that's been about political and being proactive in the political realm. So I'm really confused when I hear people that say they want to sit out. But I do think I got a good idea as to why there's people sitting out. Because there's a lot of stuff that's happening that I think some people can have a different take on how things went down, some different angles that we may not be seeing. And I think that's so like, for example, when the brother was just talking about how Trump was able to pick up voters that Hillary Clinton left off, I disagree with that assessment, partially because Hillary Clinton didn't win the nomination. They gave her the nomination. Bernie Sanders won it. And the same people that didn't go vote for Hillary Clinton were the ones that didn't vote for her in the primary. And that showed. Donald Trump, albeit was a clown, celebrity, you know, the whole apprentice and everything, but he won the primary legitimately. And so he got those legitimate votes. So everybody has this, we like rewrite history and act like, you know, Hillary lost because there was this vacuum of voters, but she lost the primary. So it was obvious she should lose the general election. And that's also what makes me nervous about this current election. We also have skipped the primary season. The Democratic Party refused to allow Robert Kennedy on the ballot as a competing against the sitting president. President went unopposed all through the primaries. And then I've been paying attention to politics for a while. Like, I'm not that old, but I've been paying attention very closely for a while. And I can't recall at any time in an election year, especially a presidential election year, that there's a debate in June. And it was the Democrats that pushed for it. It was Joe Biden's people that pushed for that debate. And me personally, I've always seen Joe Biden as weakened at Bernie for the last 3 years. Doesn't take any questions from the press, doesn't come talk to anybody in the community. And if it hasn't been about illegal immigrants, they really don't have much to say about it. And then all of a sudden he comes out to have a debate, and then the whole world is trying to act like they're surprised that he doesn't seem mentally capable when he hasn't demonstrated any ability to be mentally capable up until that. And then all of a sudden, very undemocratically, Joe Biden writes a letter, and all of a sudden Kamala, is the Democratic nominee. So from my angle, there's been at least 2 presidential elections that the DNC has purposely avoided what the Democratic voters have chosen. They chose Joe Biden this time, and if Joe Biden wasn't good enough to go, I don't know why they chose him. And if Kamala Harris wanted to run, I don't know why she didn't. And I think that would change the whole dynamics, because most of the people that are sitting out, they're not comfortable with Trump, but they don't know Kamala. And they don't know Kamala because she hasn't made herself visible for 3.5 years. And then she gets into the race with 70 days to go, and then everybody's supposed to embrace her as if they chose her. I think the reluctance to choose her is smart. And I kind of think that a lot of Black people should reconsider their view of Donald Trump and voting for him. So I think that's where the space should be, is that we should really be evaluating how we came to certain conclusions about him and his administration, and what those policies, how they affected Black people and how they could benefit Black people. Or we could talk about how the Democratic policies have not favored us. And at which point are we going to leverage the power that we do have in order to get something that we do want? Because this party they haven't asked us what we wanted. They haven't promised to give us anything. They're doing the same thing they've been doing since Reagan, which is saying the other guy's racist, and he's going to lock all the Black people up and put us back on farms. So vote for us. So that's my point.
Okay. Any reaction to that before we go to the next question?
So yes, I'll react, and I take all the comments. I really agree about the Bernie Sanders comments. I'm a Bernie Sanders girl, but as a Black person first and a woman second, I am not 100% in line with any political party. Let me just be honest about that. I'm a registered Democrat in my area. That's my choice. But when I look at policies, I can see systemically, I'm a person that's in recovery for 34 years. And I can see both administrations being very, very abusive to people like me. I have a substance use disease. It's the only disease that's criminalized by every party. I can walk through Democrats and Republicans that have chosen to put people like me in jail instead of giving us help. Being a person with 2 felony convictions, I can certainly say how public policy and political determinants have not been friendly to people. And a lot of times laws are made based on the end user. We treated crack addiction very differently than we're treating opioid. And let me just get to Donald Trump. As a Black woman, I cannot support somebody that use rhetoric every time they talking about a Black woman, they call them filthy and nasty. That's offensive to me. Every time they're referring to Black people, they make derogatory comments. And maybe it's because I'm from the hood. In the hood, when you talk about my folks, we get jiggy with it. So I can't tolerate that. I hear what's being said about Kamala getting in the game late, but they do it all the time. It's only a problem when it's us doing it. It's only a problem when it's a woman doing it. All of these political games and shenanigans. What about the Heritage Foundation and this Project 2025 that's loaded to privatize healthcare for veterans and take away their health privileges, trying to tell a woman what to do in her body? What about a president who go against people that have been exonerated and try to get them locked up, but then pardon other people that have committed crimes? A president that causes a war on January 6th and then say it's a day of love. And maybe it's personal to me because I served as a school board member for 9.5 years. And I had the Moms for Liberty and the White Boys and all those racist groups come after me for simply trying to mask kids in school and protect them from the COVID virus. So we can all check boxes about things that we don't like about each party, but I'm Black first and woman second. And I don't like comments about Haitian and foreign hardworking legal immigrants eating cats and all this other negative rhetoric that I hear, calling an educated Black woman dumb. As a Black woman, that's what we deal with when we try to do the right thing and move up the ladder. And I certainly can't support any man that's been convicted of sexual assault. It could be me, it could be my mama or my daughter. So there are some principles that hold true to me in my heart. And when I look at the two, I have a chance to move forward, or I have a chance to continue this love affair with America where it ain't a 50-50 love. Teddy Pendergrass told us about that. So I think with my party, the Democratic Party, I can at least get, somewhere closer to the 50-50 than I can with the Republican Party. I'm about to go back to a love affair where I ain't even 10%. So for me, it's clear. And I can hear all the nuances because I'm a good listener. And as a Black policymaker in the state of Florida, I'm in a super majority. But I'm unapologetic. I'm the only person in the Florida legislators that ever lived homeless. And I didn't hesitate to tell them that. It's sinful to put homeless people in jail. But DeSantis ain't too far away from Trump. They all think alike. So we may take it personal that we benefit personally, but when we look at our Black communities, ain't nothing changing. When we look at what's happening to our children in schools, some Baker Acts and all these political determinants, we need to wake up. Maybe it's time, and I know it ain't a popular name right now, but years ago, Puff Daddy was talking about a Black party. So when are we going to get bold enough to take the power that we need for ourselves? Until we do that, I'm lining up with who's going to care more and respect Black people more than somebody that's going to outright talk about us and call us all kind of names and tell lies about our community.
So I don't want to cut nobody off. I just want to address some of the points that you made because it kind of wrapped around what I heard the brother earlier, Richard, has said about the media manipulation. So when I talk to a lot of Black people about politics, that's what I get is about rhetoric and sound bites. But the reason why it's called politics is because they're politicians and they write policy. And policy is, like you told me, is what actually governs our lives. So I think the focus should be on the policies. Now, if the rhetoric goes to speaking the policies, then it's useful. But the media has been very, very, it's like we talked about how the media manipulates the image of the Black man and the Black woman and the Black family. The media definitely can manipulate the image of Donald Trump. And they basically have told us why they manipulate is because he's not a politician. And I agree. He has a lot of unsavory rhetoric. He says a lot of stuff out of tune. But at the same time, well, we had Biden that had great rhetoric and kept us all asleep and didn't raise us up. But we've had inflation. Inflation makes makes our money worth less. And everybody in this country works on money. So if you're trying to help money, you don't have to say black people, you don't have to say white people,
All
because
right,
if you're
well,
helping money,
let me say something, because I totally disagree. I get right now, as I said, I have no dog in this hunt. I'm a no party affiliated voter, and it's hard to listen from the middle. It really is, because you're trying to give both sides. You're trying to you want there to be good on both sides. There is no comparison to the character of Donald Trump and the character of Joe Biden. There is no comparison of the
I
character.
disagree.
Okay, hold on.
Very
Wait. I'm sorry. None of them have 34 felony convictions. None of them have said grab them by
Why
the.
do you think that's organic? I'm
No,
asking you.
I am not trying to tell you about where it comes from or how it works. Nobody put a gun up to Trump's head and said you can grab him by the pussy. Nobody said that stuff.
Again, it's sound bites.
No, those are not sound bites, dude.
It's a sound bite from an interview off the mic.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you
From the
something.
1990s. It's a
Okay,
sound
listen.
bite. And that's all. It's a sound bite.
No,
but it's a
I get
sound
it.
bite.
Listen, when
You
you're
can tell me
looking
one
at just-
policy that was
Bruh.
detrimental to black people that would cut everything and make it easier.
Bruh,
What were the
but I'm
policies
saying,
that he implemented
I'm
that were
not arguing
detrimental
the
to our
character.
community?
Listen, we're talking about black folk coming out and vote. And what Dr. Osgood said earlier is that we don't have a third party. And the reason why we don't have a third party is black folk who jump in this pool and start swimming today, based on the information that they got through research or internet or whatever it is today, don't go back 150 years ago. If we want to start this conversation.
I can.
Okay, let me finish my point.
I personally can.
Okay.
I personally can.
No,
I don't
I'm
know about
saying,
everybody.
I'm not. This is not about you, man. I'm not.
I
making it
know.
about you.
I know.
Okay. I am saying, and please don't, if we're going to have this discussion, and so that it doesn't turn into the typical Fox News debate where you come from your
I don't
angle.
watch Fox News or MSNBC.
Okay, so I'm just
I
saying.
don't even know what they do on there.
Yeah, actually, hold on real quick. Hold on. So here's how we're going to do this. Keep your answers under 2 minutes or less. And, for brother or sister speaking, let them finish their point. And if you want to interject, but let's not talk over each other. Let's do that.
Let me wrap this up in 2 minutes, because I'm interjecting what brother just interjected to her. Okay. So I was waiting to make my comment, and my comment was going to be very simple. After the Civil War, from 1865 to 1877, we had like a massive movement of black folk, because black folk were able to vote. We got more people in office. There were more senators and people in politics and everything else. And from 1865 to 1877, 12 years, we got the 13th Amendment passed, which abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment passed, which gave us the right to equal protection. And the 15th Amendment passed, which gave us the right to vote. All of that happened, and then came 1877, and this is what my point is. The Compromise of 1877, the Republicans and the Democrats got together in a private meeting and agreed, literally, to hand the presidency over to the Republican Rutherford B. Hayes in exchange for the Democrat walking away. The Democrat had won the popular and the electoral vote, but we know they cheated in the South. But that wasn't the issue. He was the elected president on a handshake. He walked away and said, I'll give you Republicans the president if you make certain that these Negroes never turn that power that they have now into something that pushes us off the table. And the third party would have been the Freedmen's Party, because we were the ones that were we could go with the Democrats when they want to go with us, and we could roll with the Republicans. But we don't have a middle anymore. They want us to be bipolar. They want us to just either be Republican or Democrats. But as independent thinking black folk, we can chop it up about what we want. And I would rather have a conversation about black policy. But we don't have a Heritage Foundation. We don't have a think tank. We don't have black folk pouring their money in to say what's important to us so that we can take it to our policymakers and then lobby them, get behind their campaign so that when they get in the office, they'll give it to us. That's what I'd like to get this conversation to. I don't want to be a Donald Trump or a Kamala Harris cheerleader. That's the bottom level. I want to be on the field playing the game. Let's be one of the teams on the field. And right now, the only two teams on the field are the Republican team and the Democratic team. Why can't we be whatever our party is? We should be on the sidelines waiting for our chance to get the ball. We haven't gotten the ball in 150 years.
All right, so Lynn react, and then I'm gonna go to Shakia. And if Dr. Harris and Marvin, y'all want to jump in.
Now, I just wanted to say that, when the Democrats have been playing checkers and the Republicans have been chess. And when the Democrats told us that if the Republicans got in, that they would take us back 150 years, they were telling the truth. And so all those years we believed that we were operating on a level of, you might say, righteous survival. I mean, we understood it. The Republicans were always the same. And right now you have all the airplane things happening because Ronald Reagan and the Republicans broke the air controllers union. In other words, they have been anti-union, and that was the signal to all the unions that you no longer have that power. We want corporations to control the company. That has been basically the Republican agenda. That Citizens United said, let's make corporations able to fund political campaigns. And so it's no surprise now that with the corporations having that much control over every level of government, it's no surprise that the corporations have bought all the properties, that there's been a truly, when you talk about a RICO operation, that's been a RICO operations. All the major corporate and real estate investors have deemed it that they want to own the properties and put everybody in a rental capacity. It's just it impacts black folks probably even worse. White folks like, I can't get a $400,000 home. Black person, I can't get a $200,000 home. But it's still the same thing. So the point is that there has been a mind shift. It's really the corporations that are really taking this country, and everything that is happening right now has happened before with the vote, the eliminating the legislatures. They say, oh, you need to have the right, the vote has to be legitimate, and there's been no real voting problem, but you are changing laws to make it harder for black people to vote. Okay. And so when we look at that and our young people don't know it, we have to see beyond who signed the check. What did Donald Trump do for me? To see a much bigger picture of a country in turmoil heading towards an autocracy where literally the things that made America free, when you read 2025, it says, hey, eliminate public education. You see it already with charter schools. In North Carolina, they just took $500 million out of the public school budget to give it to charter schools. And charter schools are just another way to resegregate it in many ways. And so that's the real war. That, like whether he signed the check or whether you like him. And it says something about a character. When you say something is a soundbite, that speaks on character. The fact that it was one word, it was a soundbite, it was also a thought in a person's mind. And so the bigger picture, and I don't know that we can really convey that, but you look at history, the bigger picture is a country sliding into autocracy and a dictatorship.
I agree. And I think that dictatorship is started by circumventing the democratic process and giving the nomination to someone.
I think that has nothing to do with it. It's so much bigger than that.
Well, for example, yeah. Because I know I like your experience, your history, and the way and the breadth of experience you bring to the table. So I'm asking, really, from this point of view, like you're saying, you're telling me all these things are different, but it's all happened before. But I think it is different because we didn't have NGOs, like we didn't have non-governmental organizations spending billions of dollars in politics in the 80s. We didn't. We didn't have dark money, like you just said, with Citizens United.
Yeah.
So why are we still playing by the same rules from the 80s when the game is definitely we just confirmed is different? Why should we respond the same when the landscape is different?
No, the game is always the same. The rules just change. The game is always a power game. It's always about who is going to be in power and control the money, the government, the resources. And so that's always the game. And what's happening, we just sort of, if you think about it, I spoke to a group, predominantly white, real liberal people, and they asked me, what can we do to help? I said, you need to go home and talk to your people. Okay. Our people are clear. We covered. Is if you think about this, when people, and I resent it when people say, oh, if the black folks got out only 40,000, we could have changed the thing. What is the mindset of America that we have to make the difference? that the divisions among white people are so stark and so different that we have to come to the rescue. Okay? Now, coming to the rescue saves us all, but isn't that something to say about America, that we even need to be there? That there's this mindset in America among basically people of non-color that really is saying that this is the way it should be, that we should be in control, that we should run everything, the corporation should be in charge, defund the education system, put political people in charge so that whoever's president runs everything.
I like that's where I guess that's where I guess the most of the confusion happens. Like, I didn't know that the Department of Education was a pro-black thing. Like, I've been wanting the dissolution of the Department of Education since I've been a kid. Like, that is not a new thing. The one of the reasons why I like that, the Department of Education, I mean, that most of the reason why our kids can't read or write right now, like, we got almost a third of our graduates coming out of school officially illiterate. And that's been from the generosity of the Democrats. And they want to pump more money into the same system that got full-grown idiots coming out of high school right now. But at the same time, the Democrats, they're the ones that's spending all this dough. They're the ones that got us all, they're helping us get so educated, but we haven't advanced. The Department of Education is the one that set the standardizing tests for everything in the country. And most of the teachers spend all time teaching toward the standardized tests. So the kids don't know anything holistically. Like you said, all the mechanic shop, car shop, all those other things have been taken out of school because they're not valued by the Department of Education, which is why I don't value the Department of Education. I don't mind it being gone. And I don't think that's defunding public education, because all they do is funnel money that the government gives them, and the government can funnel that same money to those states and those schools. But instead, we got a one-size-fits-all top-down approach that we know, and we all just sat here and said, acknowledge, that does not benefit us or anybody. Now, it's not like it's hurting black folks. It's not hurting Americans. We're math, science, technology, we're some of the worst in the world, and we spend more money than anybody in the world. And it's the Department of Education that's behind it. So I don't know why something that none of us can come up here and defend why it needs to exist. Why is its non-existent so threatening to black people?
Let me just jump in as the only school board member. First of all, we got to understand how education works, okay? The federal government has money that it gives directly to schools, and then the state provides money. The state legislator is what's in control, more power and more control of local
the Department
school
of
districts,
Education.
of most school districts. No, follow me. Hold on for a minute. Hold on. I didn't cut you off. I didn't cut you off. I'm telling you facts. Let me finish, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The federal government has its programs that it offers. Most of the state budget, if you look at the state of Florida budget, is an education budget that the state funds the school. It is the state legislators that set the amount of money that it's going to appropriate to schools per pupil. I'm in the state of Florida. We're the lowest. Let me just be clear. None of the models of education are funded properly. Traditional public, traditional charter, or private schools. The states do not fund education properly. When you take the money from the federal government and you give it to the state, and you say the state can opt out of programs and use it how they want to, is when you lose the checks and balances. Yes, there needs to be an overhaul on the federal level and the state level of education in general. For example, if I'm a single mom and I'm sending my kid to a traditional public school, I'm going to get free bus and free lunch. If I send the same kids to a private school, I'm going to pay for the bus and the lunch. So none of the fundings of education, in order for it to be clearly a choice, you got to put money into all three systems. I am a product of a public school system. I am a mom of 3 kids that went to traditional public, traditional charter, and private school. So I'm saying based on experience as a country, whether federal or state, we don't overall do right by education. If I go back to history and Horace Mann, when they created this universal educational system, it was never intended for us to be smart. They were trying to develop soldiers. That's why you only went up to 7th or 8th grade. It was only when we started competing against China and Russia that we started pushing technical schools, graduate and postgraduate degrees. We've moved away from that on every level of education. Every child is not going to go to college. Many brilliant people never step foot on a college. But we have to collectively, Democrats and Republicans, a lot of our problem is we're too politicized. We're too partisan focused instead of focusing on people and working together across party lines to solve these problems. So when I hear Brother Lynn talking, I do agree with some of the things that you're saying, but it's an impact overall. And since data tells us that 80% of Black kids go to public school systems, that's why we talk about it in a way of the impact it's going to happen to Black kids. But it's also going to hurt white kids in that same school system.
Okay, now I hear you, but I think the one thing that I'm talking about that you didn't really quite address is even when the federal government assigns that money, federal government does it through the Department of Education. And like you said, it's screwed up on the state level. But what I could tell you is nobody in no state, like you're in Florida, I'm in Pennsylvania, we got other people in other states. None of us vote for who's in charge of the Department of Education. But if that money was in the schools and it was going to the states, we would have a direct way to influence and have more accountability over what they do in education. By having that extra layer of federal funding and an extra layer of bureaucracy, it actually makes it tougher for individual parents, school boards, and everybody else to actually have influence and have a say in what we want as education for our kids. Is top down, coming from an unelected agency with their own ideals and their own ambitions.
But let me just say this.
That's absolutely not true. And you do vote for who control the money in the state,
and
because
you
you vote for the governor that appoint the
So
person.
if we gave more money to the states and then we have a direct way to vote for people in the states, why is that a bad thing?
Your
reason-
person in your state that controls education is appointed by the governor that you vote for. Title IX dollars are federal dollars that go directly to schools. Schools need the federal funding and they need the state funding.
So how do you feel about?
If the state can opt out, I'm in the state of Florida, I can tell you, we're going to take the money and give more corporate tax breaks. You asked a question earlier about policy. I put a policy in the chat for you, which was one of Trump's main policies that majorly impacted Black people. It was the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. It created a larger wealth gap because it only provided benefits for 1% of Americans, which were mostly not people of color. So I put all the facts. I'm a policymaker, so I'm prepared to talk about those political determinants.
And I agree with you, but I think the tax cut choice is wrong. Because if you look on the IRS website, like you said, it's policy. The tax cuts were for every single income level, starting with people that only earned as much as $10,000 in a year. They got a tax cut. When they gave out that tax cut and tax cuts, because like we talk about wealth and wealth creation, they got tax cuts characterized as if tax cuts are costly, when we know it's an economic fact that tax cuts actually bring in more revenue for the government because more people take home more money, they spend more money. So how did cutting taxes end up hurting Black people when Black people need more money in their pocket? The main reason why I don't like taxes is because taxes is taking money out of people's pocket. And just like that brother said, when we got in 1865 and everybody was voting Republican, they were voting Republican for very key reasons. It was because it was a limited government that would leave them alone. They had just got out of slavery. Naturally, they didn't want no government help. It was because they wanted to keep their own guns because they had KKK and white folks trying to kill them. They needed weapons, and they didn't want taxes because, you know what, when they were working as slaves, they didn't make any money. So to come out, start your own business, and then all of a sudden you still owe the government money just because you started a business sounded retarded.
How is the government funded?
Well, can I say one thing?
No, the government is not funded through taxes. The government is funded through the bonds that they sell for debt.
Taxes is a large
Yeah,
part of it.
yeah.
We say we want these services and we
Yeah.
tax ourselves to have them. When you
No,
cut
you
Yeah.
taxes,
don't.
you take away programs for our brothers and
No, you
sisters
don't.
Yeah,
that need
yeah.
No,
housing,
you
that
don't.
need
No, you
food.
Yeah.
don't.
That's what
No, you,
those
no,
tax
you
Yeah.
don't.
dollars fund.
Yeah.
That's why you can't. I'm just saying
I
that you
think,
got an economic model. Go look at any country and go see where the government, right? And where people earn money and the government takes 40% of that money to redistribute it, and they're better off. There's nobody that works for. You have the because the government first is filled with waste. That's why we got so much money to send to Ukraine and everywhere else we don't need to. So if that was the critical money that we needed to continue funding, then how do we still got money to send to Israel? How do we still got money to send to Ukraine?
Because
Then
we
they tell
choose
you,
to, instead of helping people with it.
no, we didn't.
Yeah.
We sat back on the sidelines and watched Rwanda happen. So I want them to do
Right.
the same thing they did for Ukraine, for Rwanda, for Ukraine.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it was cheap too.
can we move? I just want to say the Department of Education was created for a purpose in 1967 after the Civil Rights Act.
Yes,
And,
and
it was created because the schools in the South were so disrespectful, underfunding. As a black kid, you never got new books, you never got
You're right.
anything.
But I want to ask you
Would you
about
let me
this.
finish?
Oh,
That's
I'm
you
sorry.
know,
I'm
because
sorry.
we're going off on a whole. But I just want to put that in that department was created for a purpose, and it was created because the states were not doing the right things by black people, by minorities, by poor people. That's why it was created. Once when you have this chess game going on with this part of America that will not die, once that was set up, as the states began to become more and more powerful, they then started giving the money to the states to let them distribute it, which is almost back to where it was before there was a Department of Education. And as we see now this happening, as this Republican governments take over state by state, as you see, they are now underfunding and not funding public education. So it was a bigger picture. You know what? How it was executed, I agree with you. Frankly, having existed in both school systems, the segregated schools were better because for one very, very important reason. And it was this. It had nothing to do with the money. More money, we could have done it. When I was a kid, we couldn't even take the college boards. We had the black college boards called the merit scholarships. But the one thing that the black segregated school had, it had people that cared about the kids. And we got more people in Ivy League school. I was the first kid to go to Ivy League school. We got kids in great colleges. We set up, the black schools, the segregated schools were taught by people who loved them. The white schools, once integration came, black kids were basically put in a country. It's like a country, a foreign nation. And I saw it happen in Wilmington. You had the Wilmington 10 where they treated the black kids so badly. I mean, so badly that many of them were convicted of crimes they did not commit, were incarcerated teenagers with men for 9 and 10 years, and the governor finally commuted it. But I'm just saying there's a much bigger picture, and that's why I want to sort of get off this whole conversation than this having money here, money there. There's a much bigger picture that's guiding all of this. All these little details we may have a perspective on, but until we see this much bigger picture, we'll all be going down a rabbit hole fighting one another. So I'll end my conversation on that.
No, and you know what? My dad is 85 years old, and my dad said the exact same thing you said about the segregated schools. He said the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. They were. Malcolm
right.
said, "Why would you have people educate you that don't love you?"
Look, I'm a Malcolm guy. Malcolm and Marcus. Them was my dudes.
Mhm. All right, Shakia, you want to jump in? Shakia, Marvin, y'all want to jump in?
Yeah, I think this is a totally robust conversation and I've enjoyed hearing all sides of it. But Lynn, not to like make you feel like folks are jumping on you, but I do want to go back to something from your first response. You mentioned something like, we don't know who Kamala is. And I think that's a question that deserves more conversation around. Kamala has been a politician, I think, since like the early 2000s. We know that Trump has business acumen, but we didn't know anything about him politically. All we knew was that he was an apprentice. He was on The Apprentice. He had, tons of hotels and businesses in New York, but yet we nominated him to be president, right? But here you have someone who went to school to be where she is. She succeeded in those roles, and yet we still don't know her. So like, my question to you is, why do we continue to say that when we know who she is? And my next question, my follow-up question would be, is it because she's a woman and we're not ready for a woman to lead at the helm? Or what else does she need to prove to the rest of the world for them to believe that she's able to do this job? Does that make sense?
So to address your question, and I thank you for following up, because that's a good question. So I think I could say this first off. One of my favorite politicians for the last half century, is Shirley Chisholm. So I have no problem with female being in leadership. I think it's stupid to be gender specific when it comes to that. So what I'm saying about her, to me, is from my angle of being a reality. Like you said, she's in the state of California. She was an attorney general in the state of California. Not a knock from me. I'm not against brothers that work in the, my sister was a warden at the jail. I got family that are police officers. But me, myself, I could never work in the jail, right? I could never be a turnkey. They couldn't pay me $200,000 to watch my brother be locked up. That's me. So also her reputation and her history as an attorney general doesn't quite fit well with me. You're prosecuting people, and yes, you can help people in the neighborhood by getting criminals out, but where is this part where you come into a leadership role? Right. And then she gets into the vice presidency, and she got the vice presidency. She hasn't done anything. She hasn't done anything to come in and outreach, just like she's going around doing all these interviews and community outreach. It's because that administration has been hiding from the press their entire time. It's not just her. It's Joe Biden. The reason why nobody knows Joe Biden was weekend at Bernie's until the debate is because they've been hiding from the media. And she was been hiding from the media until he refused to take another debate with her. That's why she's had to go on the media circuit. If she went into the primaries, we would know her, because she would have had to come to Pennsylvania. She would have had to come to Pittsburgh, come to Philly, and have to talk to people in Philly to make up her policy platform. But since she hasn't even had to sell anything to the voters in order to get their vote, now it's just, you don't want to have Donald Trump take you back to the slavery plantation, so you got to vote for me. And I'm not going to be out here like how Barack, and he lost a lot of points with me, with him coming down and being chastised. Like, that was probably his most ineloquent, like, public speaking I ever seen. And he's up here chastising brothers because they're not just looking at the Democratic Party as the pro-black party and just voting with it. And when I listen to brothers, I got my uncle, right? My uncle I go golf with. We disagreed about this. He sent me a video with older brothers saying we letting younger brothers down because they don't know about the history of this. Well, we keep looking backwards, fighting the last battle. And he's out here, again, inflation, again, immigration. How is letting all these immigrants come into our communities? They're coming into our communities. He said black jobs. It was inarticulate. It was ineloquent. But I got brothers that are felons, just like she said. They ain't getting those jobs. I got people in Ohio, okay? They brought in the migrants from Haiti.
Right now,
But other people in Ohio that don't got jobs. There were people in Ohio that don't got jobs.
They didn't want the jobs. They
right
couldn't do
now-
the jobs. They quit. According to the white people in the manufacturing company, the black people would show up for one day and they would quit the jobs. What has Trump shown you? What I thought I knew about Donald Trump through his administration and what I've seen lately, it's been all lies. He's not a great business owner. That was a lie we were sold. Most of his businesses went bankrupt. He denied what he said about women. It's been proven that it was true. So I'm on the other side where and I'm trying, because I got my family represents everything. So I try to really look at the facts. I've been very disappointed about the lies that I was told by Donald Trump. And we gave him a chance. So I'm willing to give Kamala a chance, and hopefully she won't prove me to be wrong. But I don't know anything about Donald Trump now. I'm very confused. The person that I'm seeing on TV today is very different than the person that I saw many years ago. You would have never got me to believe that he would say and do the things that he's saying and doing.
And to be real, it's bigger than Trump. Like, we're focused on Trump. Trump's health is also declining as well. If we're wanting to compare apples to apples, the bigger picture is JD Vance. He's He's young. He has a slicker, smoother game than Trump has. He's more
Oh,
eloquent
it's
in
better
his
than
speech.
everybody involved.
Exactly. So like we're looking at Trump as being the face of the Republican Party when we need to be looking at JD Vance because he's the one that's going to take the torch and really implement Project 25. We're not even talking about him.
And,
See,
and
here-
I
and
and
here
I
goes the
said
thing.
this that President Obama, the Republicans, they phrase it that way. He didn't come out there to make the people vote Democrat. He came out there because he understood the game. He came
Well, he
out there.
came, like, for example, he
No,
came
he
out of
came out there
MAGA.
because he understood that if this election goes a certain kind of way, that it's going to be a long, hard road for
Like,
black folks.
You're right, but when I
And poor
started to
people.
notice some of these cracks is when I noticed the lies that they told. So, like, for example, they say Donald Trump lies all the time. He said the crime went up. They fact checked him during the debate. No, crime has actually went down. Friday, though, the FBI just adjusted their statistics and said crime actually did go up. So he wasn't a liar. He told everybody to take that clock to win, whatever it was during COVID. That sounded crazy. Da-da-da. Turns out they're treating people with it right now. Like he said, we should build a border wall. There's a problem with immigration. I was one of the people that said, no, there ain't no problem with immigration, living in Pennsylvania, like I was on a border state. But I didn't see no problem with immigration. I didn't see the reason for a border wall. But Kamala's even mentioned doing a border wall now. So it's like border walls went from being racist to being okay.
Yeah.
MAGA, Make
Yeah.
America Great, went from being
Yeah.
racist to it's
Why-
okay
yeah.
that the Democrats say it.
Why do you keep calling her Kamala? That's like one of the ways that white people always
I'm gonna call her
minimize black
Harris because I
people.
literally, the thing, I guess
Is
the
to
thing
call
that
them
also,
by
the
Uncle
thing that
and
also
Charlie.
bothers me is she's been vice president for 4 years, and this whole distinction about how to pronounce her name started in July. That in of itself makes it weak to me. Like,
No,
if
we've
he-
been pronouncing her name right. We
Yeah.
respect black people enough to pronounce their name
Harris,
right.
Right.
But when they
Harris,
talk about
Harris.
crime statistics, you got to be careful who you believe on that because
The FBI?
black people are going to jail instead of going for 10 years now. They're going for 20 and 25 and 30 years. So anytime you're locking people up longer, just that and within itself, whether they black, white, or whatever, it's going to reduce crime. And most of those people are people like me with substance use disorder, to the point where we have 1 in 9 children that have a mom and dad in jail. And neither the Democrats or Republicans are talking about mass incarceration. That's why I'm a Bernie Sanders girl, because he was. We can flip words and we can flip stories based on who we
guess
get our data from or where we read our data. But when you go dig up, like Trump's economy was great the first 2 years because he inherited from Obama. It's no way I would expect Trump or any elected official to have a good economy when they're in the middle of a global pandemic. It is the truth. Whether it was Trump, it was Biden, or whoever, you're going to have problems in the economy in a pandemic. Out of a pandemic, no matter who the president is, inflation is going to increase because the government has to come up with so much money to get the people out of the critical time that they're in. I'm in Florida right now. We've had hurricane after hurricane. It's going to blow our budget because people have literally lost their homes, rich people on the beach. The government is going to have to kick in and give those people some money to help them get back on their feet. It's going to put a deficit in the budget. It's going to have an impact. That is how government works. We can't play the blame game with this party or that party. We have to tell the truth. Elected officials, and I'm one, like to take credit for stuff when it works and like to pass the buck or throw shade when something is not working. Based on what's happening that we have no control of, a lot of that dictate what goes on with the budget. But when I hear us talk about giving more corporate tax breaks, I'm a middle class income earner. I'm paying more now. My taxes are more because when you give the tax break up here, the money has to come from somewhere else. The poor people on the bottom are not paying. Us in the middle, we're being taxed out of the yang to pay for the corporate tax break. I'm for tax breaks, but they need to be done in a way that they don't make one person at a greater disadvantage to help another person gain. And that's my argument. And I can go policy, I can walk you
No,
through
that's what I want you to
policy.
do. I'm gonna ask
Let's
you to
set that.
explain to me.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
gonna
hold
ask
up.
you
Yeah,
to-
nah, we're not about to do all that.
No.
Marvin, we're gonna let some other brothers speak. Y'all are gunning right now.
It's a black man's son.